I have hit the live button. I should be live. Guys, let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if there's any issues. And yes, happy holidays. We have passed the Christmas days and we are fast approaching the new year. And even though you would argue that during these times news would be slow typically, well, not so much right now. There's stuff to talk about, so we're gonna be talking about that tonight. I had initially just planned to talk about the online features we might see for Tears of the Kingdom and this talk about Switch Pro being canceled from Digital Foundry, but our buddy Nintendo Prime put out another video and a few people are talking about some next generation Switch rumors as well, so I guess we should talk about that too. So I probably should add the title then. Let's see. How should I change the title? Should I just add next gen rumors? Yeah. Next gen rumors, Tears of the Kingdom online features, and Switch Pro cancel. Yeah, that's fine. I think that gets the point across. Yeah. Snicksnack, you're loving these new midweek Q&A streams. Well, I'm glad you're loving them. I hope we can do them consistently. So if you guys could like the stream, send it out to others, share it, so we can get this ball rolling. But yeah, we're gonna be chilling tonight for a little bit, just kind of talking about the news and whatever comes up. So let me just kind of get into the chat here. I saw some things. Normally I have the chat like on this side. I had it all the way over here. I guess it's fine if it's over there. I just don't normally have it over there. So what I'll do is I'll change it up. No, I'll just keep it the same. It's fine. Alright. Cool. I have it like this. That way I can see everything. Alright, so Megaton Menace. You added me. You asked, when are you going to make a discussion video on the story and ending of Bayonetta 3? I'm not sure. I might not even get around to doing it. I am still not playing through Bayonetta 3 right now. I'm going to, but I just have so much I'm trying to do. I've mentioned that I have a project that I'm working on that requires that I play Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. But I imagine that I will be getting through Bayonetta between now and January 20th, which is when Engage comes out. So in terms of me putting out like an actual discussion video, I didn't have any plans for that per se. But you know, I'll gladly, you know, still talk about Bayonetta, you know. I could definitely give it like its own dedicated topic on the podcast. We'll see. It kind of depends. But yeah, I know people are waiting for me to kind of play through it, and I fully intend to. It's just I personally have a lot of things I'm trying to get through right now. Alright, so J.R. Tolkien, you added me. Keeping in the spirit of the channel's namesake, you should call these Thursday jaunts Just Blow on It. Those with ears, let them hear. That particular phrasing, I understand what you're going for, but I'm just not that one. Not that one. I do remember blowing some air on some cartridges though. Super Chris, hello. Thank you for modding. Gone Hunter, hello there. Maximum effort. Alright, I see you there. Cool. Cool. DE Fox, hello. Thank you for modding as well. TC, saw you earlier. Happy holidays. Samuel, hello. Hello there, Having Hope. Paco Salvador, hello there. Joy CJ, hey. Alright. So, we got some people in the chat already. It's all good. Let's talk about... Yeah, let's you know what? How about let's dissect these new next gen rumors here. Let's get into that first. So there's a little bit of conversation going on here from a few different people. Let me pull that up for you guys. Alright. So, here's this. Right, so Andy Robinson tweeted out, "From what I'm hearing, I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo starts talking about new hardware by 2024. I'm not convinced another huge first-party game other than Zelda is left on Switch. In parentheticals, usual Nintendo prediction caveats apply." So this is following up, looks like, that podcast from Digital Foundry, which we're also talking about, where they discussed that the Switch Pro is canceled. But let me read this part here just to make sure. Rumor in Digital Foundry's podcast, they mentioned that Switch Pro is in the works until Nintendo's canceled the entire project, and that could be to avoid taking the risk of releasing another console failure, since they had previously did with GameCube and Wii U. They mentioned the Switch and cancel the entire project, and that could be to avoid taking the risk of releasing another failure. Well, yeah, but I mean, Pro would be a different thing, so kind of confused on that. But alright. Well, there's this other thing that Nintendo Prime actually had brought up as well. Is someone else talking on this, Christopher Dring. So, looking here, I'll just read it from the beginning. "I completely get the iterative approach to developing Pokemon. I'm not even opposed to it. I just feel they could have moved Legends to this Christmas, give that game a few more months in the oven, and then Scarlet and Violet next Christmas. There will be a good reason why they didn't, but if what I hear is true about Nintendo's post-Zelda lineup, there isn't one. Those games could play a key role next year." This person says, "Wait, what? You mean all next games are in development for the next hardware?" No, it didn't mean literally nothing. I have heard that after Zelda, Nintendo doesn't have a significant game for quite some time. So, alright, let's come back to me. Okay, so now my cat's banging on the door. She thinks that's okay. Let's see here. So, anyway. Next gen rumors. Firstly, when they talk about big games, those big games would be the kind of games that could exceed 10 million copies sold. 10 may seem like an arbitrary number, but significant sellers. One moment. Alright, get inside. Come on. Don't just stare at me. Come on, get inside. You've chosen this. Come on. You've made the noise. Inside you come. Let's go. Come on, move your tail. I'm not gonna crush it. Let's go. Alright, she's inside. She'll probably jump on me at some point or another. So you'll see her. But, yeah. So, yeah. These games, these big games, like, what they're saying is there's not going to be anything after Tears of the Kingdom that's, like, big. And I'm personally skeptical of that. So, it depends. By big, right, like, well, so I don't think Nintendo would skip June through December and not have any significant sellers throughout that entire period. Let's point out that the Mario movie's coming out in April. Do you really think they're not going to have a single Mario game at all in 2023? So, personally, I would say that this, I don't know, I think they're being misleading, or they're a little off. That's my personal opinion. I don't think they're really considering all the factors here, unless this new system is coming out sooner than what people are saying, right? So Andy Robinson does say by 2024. And by 2024 would mean, in theory, yes, in 2024, but also beforehand. So that could line up with the speculation that maybe Nintendo pushes new hardware with Tears of the Kingdom. But, I mean, it also could be afterwards. I just personally think that regardless of when they push this new hardware, one, it will be very weird for them to skip out on Zelda taking advantage of that hardware. And then two, to go the entire year without having any other big sellers in a year where they're having the Mario movie. Like, listen, big sellers, you know, that's a weird term, right? Because Pikmin 4, Metroid Prime Remaster, F-Zero, Kid Icarus, they're gonna be fun games for us to play and enjoy, but those games they may not expect to exceed, like, you know, 8-10 million copies or more. But I would at least expect like a 2D Mario game, if not 3D Mario, at least a 2D Mario game to come out next year. And what they're suggesting is that we won't even see those until the next hardware. So that's where I'm not sure. Now, again, if the system's coming out sooner than 2024, like sometime in 2023, and then we see those games available for that system, then okay, that's fine. That makes sense. But, you know, a lot of people are really buying into the whole 2024 thinking, and maybe that's the case. But I just think it would be weird for Nintendo to skip the entire year. Another weird thing, some people are going to say, oh, Nintendo should do another Switch thing and just come out March 2024. And they could do that, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But why would they intentionally skip the holiday? I just don't see why they would target skipping the holiday. We know that Nintendo wanted the Switch to come out in 2016, holiday 2016, but they didn't have the lineup together. They wanted to have a strong launch, so they had things happen in March. But if things were lined up appropriately, they would have done it holiday 2016. They didn't. There are interviews of that. So I really don't buy into the thinking that they would intentionally target March unless there's just something holding them back from doing so. And that it could just be getting supply ready, getting software ready. These are possibilities, but I think the main point here is that they would target a holiday release for hardware. They're not going to intentionally avoid the holidays. That's not what they're going to do. I really doubt that. So, you know, there's that whole consideration. And there's a whole other argument that, like, well, are they going to completely abandon the entire Switch base and just start coming out with exclusive games after Tears of the Kingdom for this new hardware? That I also am kind of like a little skeptical of, because I mean, there's just so many people who have a Switch. I mean, we have to see what Nintendo's going to do, right? Like, there's a lot of variables here on how they handle things, but I don't know. Basically, I'm taking what both Andy Robinson and Christopher Dring are saying with a grain of salt. You know, it's not. I think that they're basing what they're saying off some real tangible information, but the interpretation of that information, that's where I'm kind of a little, I'm suspicious. Let me see what you guys think here in the chat. So let's see here. Yeah, Ruby jumped up a little bit. She didn't show up on camera. Not yet. Gone Hunter. Nintendo will not just abandon the Switch. They're not going to just abandon the Switch. There's going to be content. There's going to be games coming out on Switch. I guess the question is, will the same games that come out for the next system also be available for Switch, or will they have a separate lineup? That's you know, kind of a conversation. I've assumed that they would have a shared lineup, but maybe they really want to get people to switch over, and maybe they're thinking they should have more exclusives. Glucose Guardian. 2D Mario isn't a big game in the way that 3D Mario and 3D Zelda are. I would agree that it's not a big game in the same way, but in terms of sales numbers it is, right? So, I mean, well, 2D Mario is a huge seller. It's gonna sell more than pretty much most other franchises on Nintendo or any platform, really. Like, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which initially came out on Wii U at launch, had a little bit of extra content in there, but I mean, they just included the DLC and a few extra power-ups from what I remember. That game, last I checked, has sold well over 13 million copies. It's one of the best-selling games on Switch. And I don't even think that's like a good 2D Mario game. I think that's like a very like cookie cutter 2D Mario. It's solid. I enjoyed it back on the Wii U. Like, I 100% of that game. I'm not trying to say it's a bad game. It is a good game, but it's nothing like, I don't know. It's just, It's very basic compared to other 2D Marios. Like it's par for the course is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I wouldn't rank it as like the best 2D Mario ever. You know what I mean? Yet that game has sold 13 plus million copies, and it's still selling. So it's a huge seller. Now, is it possible that when they say big Nintendo games, they don't think of that, and they're just thinking of maybe like just like the really the kind of games that they really give you the oohs and ahs? Okay, well then that's also like debatable, right? Because Pikmin 4, well, I don't expect it to sell 5-8 million copies. I think it's gonna sell maybe a few million, maybe 2 to 3, maybe a little bit more than that. From a visual perspective, it's going to be a very impressive game. F-Zero GX HD remaster, that whole thing, like assuming it's not an F-Zero and they just remastered GX, that may not be as impressive as a whole-on new game. But F-Zero GX is an insanely good game, and an insanely good looking game from the GameCube, and if they were to remaster that, it would look really impressive. Probably won't sell more than a few million, but it's, from a visual perspective, it's going to be impressive, and the same thing with Prime Remaster. But let me get to Super Chat here. I saw I got a Super Chat. Let me get to that. Samuel A, thank you very much for the Super Chat. Samuel A says, next-gen Switch rumors are coming in storms now. Definitely by late 2023 we get new hardware. However, Switch games will come out for 2 years, I think. So you think definitely by late 2023? Yeah, that's definitely, in the cards, I would say. Late 2023. Like my prediction has been so this is where my percentages stand as of my predictions video last Saturday. 40% that we see a new system alongside Tears of the Kingdom in May. 40% it comes out sometime the second half of the year, maybe with a big Mario game. And then 20% it comes out in 2024. Like, that's where I stand on that. So, we'll see. But, yeah, I mean, it definitely seems we are on the way there. Typically, what we've seen Zeldas at the beginning or end of a console. So when there's a big Zelda there, that usually spells the end. So even if Tears of the Kingdom isn't like a launch title for the next system, a cross-platform release, once Tears of the Kingdom comes out, we're probably within a year of the next system. So yeah, we are approaching the end times. Because I also agree with you that Switch will still be supported for a few more years. Pretty much exactly how they supported 3DS. There are still new games coming up for 3DS in 2019. Switch launched in 2017. So for more than 2 years after Switch, we are still seeing support for 3DS. I expect the same to apply for Switch at least 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if they support it for a little bit more. But let me just double check something here, because I actually I'm getting a call in here in about 40 minutes. I just want to make sure that they're good to go. You're good to go. Let me just. You're ready, right? Yeah. Okay. Yep. I guess you're ready. Gotcha. Okay, cool, Samuel A. I understood. I was like wondering if you're the same person. All right, good. Cool. Hello there, Narwhal Gaming. Okay, there we go. My chat wasn't responding for a moment. Let's see here. D Fox, new hardware in 2023-2024 is what I'm thinking. Okay. Alex, I think it'll be a DS to 3DS situation. I'm trying to remember how that transition went. Because 3DS came out 2010, right? The end of... I always get it confused. It released February 2011 in Japan, March 2011 everywhere else. So it was early 2011, not the end of it. Okay. And then Nintendo DS. What kind of support were we seeing for it at the end? I'm trying to kind of remember. And by remembering, I'm Googling it. So let me see here. Looks like Google doesn't do much for me. I just want to see like a list of Nintendo DS software. That's all I'm looking for is Nintendo DS. Like, but then it's the thing is they did the DSi. The DSi kind of helped push it up a little bit, and then they took a while to move on with Pokemon. I'm not trying to buy DS games. I'm trying just to see what games are coming out when. I'm just trying to see like a nice list. List of Nintendo DS games. There we go. Oh, this is an ABC order. That doesn't help me too much. But let's see. We saw games coming out in 2010. There were games coming out in 2011 still. Not a lot of games, but there were games coming out in 2011. Okay. It's not the list I wanted, but it got the job done. That's fine. Alright. Let's see here. Evandro Philhall. Pikmin is a hardware showcase. I agree. And that's another kind of question mark game for me. So we think back to Pikmin 3 when it came out on Wii U. I gotta pull up the interview. I might make a video on this at some point. But there is an interview with Shigeru Miyamoto where he talks about how going into HD for Pikmin was quite a benefit because of all the smaller details. The higher resolutions really benefit that. So now imagine Pikmin 4 at an even higher resolution. How that's going to benefit it. And just go and look at the Pikmin 4 trailer. It's a very short trailer. We only have like 10 seconds of footage, if even that. And what they show looks pretty impressive for a Switch game. I'm not saying it's not Switch footage. It absolutely is Switch footage. But this Pikmin game is going to push the Switch. And I would be surprised if there's not a better looking running version on new hardware. Like, I just kind of, I feel like Pikmin is definitely a kind of game that would showcase good visuals. So, you know, even if it's not coming out for new hardware, Pikmin 4 is going to be a showcase for what the Switch can really do. But if new hardware is right around the corner, why would they not have some sort of better looking running version of Pikmin 4 for that system? Also, same applies for Tears of the Kingdom, by the way. Like, why wouldn't they have some sort of special version of Tears of the Kingdom for that new hardware? They would just be really strange to not have something. Now, these games can come out first, and then they have updates for them afterwards. Maybe they're like, oh, you can get these 4K versions for free if you buy the Switch 2 or something. Like, maybe they'll do something like that. And the Switch doesn't come out till late 2023 or early 2024. But definitely, I feel like Pikmin... It is an interesting case. Like any other Nintendo game, I would have been like, okay, like, you know, had they announced Kid Icarus or had they announced like Wave Race or F-Zero or something like that, or what's it, Golden Sun would have been amazing, or Earthbound. Like, had they brought back any other older franchise, I would have not really thought the same thing. Like, but it was Pikmin, and Pikmin's the kind of game that, well, we've known it's been in development for years. Like, technically, Miyamoto told us that Pikmin 4 was nearly done back in 2015, and we're seeing it now. I'm sure they restarted development or something, but it's just interesting that it's coming out now with all this talk of new hardware. So, definitely, you know, I could see them doing something with that. The Sound of Forgetting. They will do what PlayStation Xbox has done with cross-gen, like PS5 and PS4. Just with PS5 version, you get 4K, more bells and whistles, so it makes the most sense and still not abandon the Switch. That's what I would think too, something to that effect. I agree that that's what they should do. It's just some of these comments from these people sort of suggests otherwise. Like, this whole idea that after Tears of the Kingdom, that's the end of major games for Switch, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, even if, regardless of if the Switch 2 is coming out 2023 or 2024, this idea that Tears of the Kingdom is the last big Switch game, that's strange. Now, if they mean the last big exclusive, and there's still big games coming out throughout 2023, okay. But even that's strange to me, because why would you leave Tears of the Kingdom as an exclusive? That does not make sense. Now, maybe Tears of the Kingdom comes out on Switch, you know, it's coming out May, and the new system's not ready then, so they just have an improved version that comes out afterwards, so alongside, like, maybe, like, the wave 1 or 2 of the DLC. Like, maybe that's what they mean, so, and maybe that's all it is. That's fine. Which would also mean we get a Zelda OLED in May. But with all this talk of next generation hardware, do I really want to buy an OLED if I'm gonna have to buy a Switch 2 6 months later? I don't know. I think at this point, just give us Tears of the Kingdom with Switch 2. That's what I want. But you know, with reality is a whole other thing. Let's see here. Charles Riddell Atomy. What do you think about Pikmin 4 only announced for next year? When and what other game should we be expecting? I'm trying to understand your question. So, do you mean, like, what do I make of it only being announced? I mean, it was announced for 2023, so I expect it to come out in 2023. I know some people are sort of thinking it could be delayed, and if it's delayed to 2024, okay, that does make some sense. But I'm not going to assume they're going to delay something until they delay it. Like, I you know, if there's not a history of most Nintendo games getting major delays, I'm just not going to assume that they're getting major delays, I guess. Like, with Zelda, I mean, in fairness, you know, I was arguing against Tears of the Kingdom getting delayed, and it did get delayed, as history dictated. I just didn't think it was appropriate for them to delay it because, well, we've already waited so long for the game. Like, it's the longest gap for Zelda's ever. So, you know, that I felt was strange. But ignoring Zelda, I don't think it's fair to just assume a game is going to get delayed if they already give us a release timing. Like, sure, maybe, you know, don't just assume until they give us a more solid release date. Like, I guess that's fair because it does happen. But I feel like we should be leaning towards it coming out 2023 if Nintendo tells us it's coming out in 2023. That's just, like, I'm going to assume they're telling us the truth. So, with that said, what other games should we be expecting? I mean, I've gone over my predictions, right? So, I'll tell you the games I'm expecting. I'll kind of list them. So, I'll talk about the known games first. We got Fire Emblem Engage. We have Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. We have Bayonetta Origins: Erase and Lost Demon in March. It's kind of a smaller game. Well, smaller, but it's still $60. So, how small is it? And then in May, we have a Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I feel like some people will be like, oh, don't forget Octopath Traveler 2. And I'm not forgetting it, but it is a multi-platform game. It's not being published by Nintendo anymore, that series, but it is still coming out on Switch. It's a quality release that will be available on Switch early in the year. And on that note, Hogwarts Legacy was pushed to July, by the way. Interestingly, the Switch version was delayed beyond the normal release date, and it's coming out in July, so there's that. But just sticking to, like, Nintendo stuff, beyond Fire Emblem, Kirby, Bayonetta, and Zelda, all we have that's confirmed for 2023 is Pikmin 4. But we also have a lot of DLC. It's not confirmed yet, but based off how they handle Sword and Shield, you can pretty much safely assume that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, being the new generation, will have DLC. There will be a couple waves, and yeah, one will come out in the summer, and the other one will come out towards the holiday, and that's how they're gonna handle it. That's what it's gonna be. There will not be a brand new mainline Pokemon game. They could announce a spin-off. Like, there could be a Pokemon Presents in February, and they could announce a spin-off or two. Like, that happens quite often. In terms of, like, the mainline series, Do not expect anything else with DLC. The DLC is effectively like their replacement for the third version. So that's going to happen. Going beyond that, we already know about the Fire Emblem expansion. That like there's going to be DLC for that throughout the year. We're going to get the story DLC for Xenoblade 3. And if it's going to be anything like the Torn of the Golden Country expansion from Xenoblade 2, it's going to potentially have its own physical release and be like a 30 to 40 hour RPG campaign, which is an equivalent to a Pokemon game, so pretty substantial there. And then Splatoon 3 also is going to have a paid DLC as well, and that's likely getting announced at some point this year too. And then we still have 3 Waves of Mario Kart DLC. And then we have 2 story DLCs for Mario Rabbids coming as well, one the summer, one the holiday. So between the announced games and all that DLC, some of which may have their own dedicated physical releases, there's already a decent amount of content for this year. But let's take all that, and then I'll give you my personal prediction as to what I think what else is coming this year. So on top of all that, I am thinking we're getting an F-Zero game. I think we're getting a Prime remaster, Metroid Prime remaster for the first one. And I think we're also getting a Donkey Kong game. And also I think we're getting a Mario game. And that's what I think. It's not a lot of extra stuff, and I'm sure Nintendo may have another couple games that may be smaller or surprises they may announce, but those are the 4 additional games I'm predicting Nintendo will bring out next year. Now, the Mario one, it's 2D or 3D. It's one or the other. And it really just depends on if the new hardware is coming out this year or 2023 or 2024. But I think we're within 2 years of both Mario games, to tell you the truth. So that's kind of like the lineup of games I'm expecting to see next year. What actually happens, we shall see. I will point out, there's a couple projects that I've been anticipating. I'm not necessarily expecting them to get announced next year, but they could. One of those projects is a game made by the team that made both Mario Kart 8 and ARMS. We haven't seen a brand new game from them since 2017. And that could be a substantial online multiplayer game. I see it as the kind of game Nintendo would actually want to have come out early on in a new system's life cycle. I have no idea what that might be. Maybe it's just a new Mario Kart, or they could have made the new Mario Kart and they could work in a whole other project. So that's one other exciting project or 2 potentially, that could be in the works, or just kind of waiting for us. And then there's also a new IP from Monolith Soft. Now, I feel like they're going to focus on the DLC this year, but given that it's a new IP, conceivably we could see both. That game's been in development for years as well. So I could see that. But it also wouldn't surprise me if we see Xenoblade X before that new IP. I'm not sure on the timeline of this new IP, right? Like, I expect that Nintendo will eventually, by Nintendo I mean Monolith Soft, will eventually give us a port of Xenoblade X. But my question is, like the timeline, like, so we're gonna get the Xenoblade 3 DLC this year. It's likely to get its own physical release, a story campaign of that. And so maybe we don't see anything else from Monolith Soft until the year after or beyond. But within the next 3 years, I expect a enhanced port or remaster for Xenoblade X. And I mean, by that point, it'd be on new hardware, and it might look really impressive on new, like a 4K Xenoblade X would be really cool. And then at some point, it gives us a new IP, which I'm hoping / slightly speculating it might be a kind of game that has like MMO like capabilities. And that might be the kind of thing you can maybe imagine on a next-gen piece hardware from Nintendo, and not necessarily the Switch. So those are a couple things I'm kind of like thinking could happen in the not-so-distant future, but not necessarily next year. Another one actually is the action remaster that we're seeing from Bandai Namco for a Nintendo project. I think it's probably a Kid Icarus Uprising remake remaster. I don't know if we see that next year, but that's something else that could be announced. I'm sure there are other things. The Next Level Games just came out with Mario Strikers, so I'm not expecting their next project, be it a Luigi's Mansion 4, what have you, and for at least another couple years. So, not expecting that. But there's I'm sure there's other surprises. Nintendo has a lot of different studios and partners that they can go to have something done. Yeah, I mean, if new hardware really is this close, I just don't understand why Nintendo would skip Tears of the Kingdom. That part's strange to me, and we don't know if they're skipping it. We'll see. Joycey J, whatever happens to the hardware, I highly doubt Nintendo will skip 6 months of software sales. Yeah, they're not going to skip it. There will be other games coming out then. I think all they mean is like big major titles that would sell a lot, but what? I don't know. Maybe they just mean in Game of the Year kind of games, which Nintendo doesn't really come out with really too often anyway. So, I don't know. Like, do major games mean things like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Splatoon 3, like brand new franchises? And do they mean that after Tears of the Kingdom, it's just going to be a whole bunch of like remasters? Maybe. I mean, I am predicting 2 remasters more that are coming out in 2023. F-Zero and Metroid, but I think they're going to be really good ones, so, you know. Let's see here. Yeah, Golden Sun would be amazing if it came back. Battery Yagami, don't think they're stupid to drop 103 million Switch owners and releasing new hardware. Nah, it's not the right time. So, my thing is, I think new hardware is close, but I do not think this new hardware is going to alienate their Switch base. I think it's going to be inclusive. So, there's still going to be new games coming out for both systems. They're going to get the same games. They're going to be cross-platform. The same way Sony and Microsoft have supported their previous systems, even now. That's how I sort of expect it. So I don't see them alienating it. By the way, it's even more than 103. Like, at this point, we're like almost 120. The official numbers haven't come in yet, but yeah, it's around there. It's at, I mean, as of Nintendo's last financial report, it was like around 114. But there have been some other reports that have suggested that they've already passed PlayStation and maybe even Game Boy and Game Boy Color already, which would put it in the 119 million area. Pikmin only pushes from a strictly visual aspect, right? I hope it looks as good as Odyssey since there's not nearly enough movement. Well, Ray Day, I expect it to look really good. Yeah, I don't even think it needs to be a 60 FPS game, although I wouldn't mind if it was 60 FPS. But yeah, Pikmin 4, I think, in a lot of ways, will look better than Mario Odyssey. I think so. Yeah. Let's see here. Moving on. Mario DK added me. New hardware in mid-2023 with Zelda feels like the only thing that can explain all this weirdness. Zelda in mid-May, Pikmin 4 brief tease, Splatoon 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 date swap, no E3 Summer Direct. Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is, I'm trying to kind of avoid confirmation bias, right? Because I'm looking at all the signs for the thing that I want the most. What I want the most is this shiny piece of hardware to fully showcase my most anticipated game. Like, I want the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom to come out with this hardware so it looks and runs as good as it possibly can, and I want it to just be the most magnificent adventure ever. And it may still be that, be it on Switch or Switch 2. But it's just kind of like one of those things where we are so close to a new system that it would be really strange for them to skip Tears of the Kingdom. And even if they do have like an upgrade option afterwards, I already played through the game already. Like, I might play through it again, yeah, but I don't know. Like, if it's more than a year out, okay, that's one thing, right? Like, maybe it doesn't come, if it's Switch 2 doesn't come out till holiday 2024, okay, that's a big gap. That's more than a year. That's a year and a half. But if it comes out next Christmas, I don't know. It's just strange. There's definitely a lot of weird things, but it's it's an unprecedented. Another thing to note here is that I think part of the reason why there's so much confusion is because Nintendo's in a unique situation that they've never been in before. Never has it been the case that this deep into a console's life cycle have they had this much momentum. They've never been doing this well. Typically, at the end of a generation, everyone knows because there's barely any games to play. But the games continue coming, and they're not going to stop because Nintendo's merged their divisions and they're focusing on one platform. So that already puts, like, for those reasons, like, it's a very unique situation, but it also becomes increasingly more unique and also a little bit perhaps contentious or maybe scary for Nintendo, because since they only have a singular platform that they are truly focusing on, they have all their eggs in one basket. So they gotta carry that basket as safely as they can. They can't run the risk of it flopping. On the flip side, I would also argue that because it's all in one basket, it's less likely to flop. Like, even when Nintendo's had the home consoles that have not performed well, they've always had the portable systems that are successful. Like, one thing Nintendo can kind of always rely on are Pokemon games. And once Pokemon Company and Game Freak move on to the next system, Pokemon's gonna sell hardware. Like Pokemon, you could argue, is one of the most important franchises Nintendo has, maybe even more important than Mario, because every year they're putting out games that sell at least 10 million, at least, if not more. It's always more. So that just, the amount of people that will buy that would be amazing. Like, imagine if they had put the mainline Pokemon games not on the 3DS, on Wii U. How much more successful Wii U would have been? Wouldn't have made sense because they like Pokemon games to be portable, but it would have made such a huge difference for Wii U. So I'm not super concerned about Nintendo's success for the next system. I think they're probably going to be fine, but I can understand why Nintendo might just be very cautious about this, right? So there's a lot of interesting situations here. And another variable that makes this whole scenario even stranger is that we are still just a couple years removed from the big pandemic. And the big pandemic caused E3 to be canceled, and the ramifications of that have led to a number of things. Like there's still the semiconductor shortage, like that's still an issue, not as much of an issue, but still an issue. And it's kind of like the long-term effects, right? Like, it's not even so much what happened immediately, but how it changes the pace of things after the fact. And that even includes how E3 this year was canceled, or this past year. Like, it's just not normal. A lot of things are still trying to normalize right now. So the events where information would have been shared, the way people got to interact with games, because it used to be a lot more hands-on events, that's all changed. Now they're normalizing, but there's been a lot of that flux. So there's all these other variables, and obviously getting hardware ready, right? So there's just so many other things here that are different. Another angle that actually makes this even more different compared to previous systems as well is that typically Nintendo works on their own sort of proprietary sort of like stuff. Like, they do partner with different companies, but like they haven't had like such they haven't partnered with Nvidia before. And we kind of have a better look as to what we could see from future Nintendo hardware based on what we're seeing Nvidia work on. So that's another kind of interesting piece to the puzzle here. And it's all, there's just so many variables. It's definitely tough to kind of figure it all out. We're not gonna know for a fact until things happen. But I want to take a look at this super chat here from Rigo Romero. Thank you very much for the super chat, Rigo. Rigo says, to have the theme parks and the movie and a new model, that will be a trifecta of craziness for them. Oh yeah, for sure. It's like that, and that is maybe, you know, kind of one of the things where Nintendo is sort of thinking, like, yes, from one perspective, they've kind of put all their eggs in one basket by focusing on a singular platform, but not entirely, because they do branch out. They have their merchandising. They have the theme parks they're working on now. They have the movies they're working on now. They have the mobile games they work on now. So they have these other businesses on the side that actually market their games even more and bring in even more people to play them. So they kind of improve each other. It's a cyclical sort of effect. So the point I sort of alluded to earlier is that even though Nintendo's focusing on one platform, because they are focusing on one platform, there's a steady stream of content. You have major things consistently coming out in the system, like Pokemon, like Zelda, and so on, and Animal Crossing. And because they are also doing the mobile games and the movies and the merchandising, they've always done merchandising, but then now also the movies and the theme parks, like all that brings in more attention to Nintendo. So, yes, at the core of it all, it's their games coming out on their singular platform that's currently the Switch, but it's a platform that's so strong and has so much paths for success that its chance of failure is far diminished compared to any previous system they've had before, and I feel like the next system should be the same. So, again, I'm not worried, but we've heard Nintendo is, so we'll see. Let's see here. LP, it's a little off topic, but I was wondering if you saw the Japanese poll for video game adaptations to animes, and Splatoon and Xenoblade were the top ones people wanted. I'm all about it. I'm a big anime fan. Xenoblade is basically an anime when you play the game. Like, the story is an anime. It's a pretty good one, so I think that would be an amazing and very easy to accomplish adaptation. Just get the writers for Xenoblade and write an anime, and then get some animators, some artists to draw it out. Like, that would be amazing. Splatoon, I've seen fan art. I wouldn't be as excited for a Splatoon anime, but I would give it a try. Yeah, I'd be fine with it. And I know Splatoon has amazing lore, right? So they could definitely give us like an interesting story. Like, I think that would be really cool. So I'm not against it at all. I would definitely give it a try, for sure. For sure. Let's see. How close are we to our call-in? All right. So Sammy's going to come in about 10 minutes. And yeah. So we're going to do a call-in. So as I've told you guys, YouTube members or patron members, we can schedule like a little bit of a call-in, and we kind of talk for about 20-ish, 30 minutes or so about different topics, and it'll be relevant to the topics we have for tonight. So, but that is part of the plan. Let's see here. Charles Trudell, 120 sold, but when it was 117, there was 104 million active, meaning probably now at 106 out of 120. Like, people who are buying systems online or like playing online and stuff. Yeah, which is a crazy amount of people. It's above 90%, or it's close to that. Evandro, I don't understand why Pikmin 3 runs at 720p docked on the deluxe version for Switch. Makes me wonder how they're going to make it perform better on Pikmin 4. Yeah, I'll have to take a closer look at that, but I wonder if it's just as simple as there was just not that much effort being put into that game. Like, I think it could be as simple as that. Like, it was just, they didn't really change around too much. Now, I know they gave us some extra stuff, but it wasn't, I don't think they created like a lot of new assets or anything like that. I think it was a fairly small team, small budget. So there wasn't that much effort put into optimization to make it look or run any better on Switch. That's what I think. I think if they made one ground up, it could definitely look and run better. Mario DK, it would be especially weirder if we believe these insiders that nothing big is coming after Zelda. What other time would be best for new hardware? Skip Zelda and launch with Peanuts? Well, I guess the implication is that after Tears of the Kingdom, there would be a bit of a slow period in terms of software, and that would be kind of like the quiet before the storm, and Nintendo comes out with this hardware. Now, when Andy Robinson said by 2024, keep in mind, by doesn't mean in 2024. It could be 2023, but it's one or the other. It could still also mean 2024. I personally think it's silly to expect Nintendo to not have a steady stream of content. But I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen this current age of Nintendo move on to next-gen hardware. I feel like the idea should be that they would want to maintain the momentum and not lose it like they always have every time they move on. It should work the way they handled 3DS, where they come out with this new system, but there are games coming out for both platforms, and there you go. Evandro, what are the odds of Nintendo not releasing a big Mario game on the same year as the Mario movie? Probably higher than I'm willing to admit. You know, like they could be better than we would like to think there. Like, it is possible that there isn't a Mario game to come out with a movie, but if Tears of the Kingdom is coming out in May, what comes out after May? Are they just not gonna have there's June, July, August, September, October, November, December? There's 7 months where they gotta have something, and I don't think it's just gonna be DLC and Pikmin 4. There's gotta be more than that. It's been so many years since a dedicated brand new Mario game, be it 2D or 3D. To me, it would be another missed opportunity. So, you know, I mean, this really could be the case that we just, maybe what we're really thinking here is that we're getting new hardware. It's coming out holiday 2023, and it's coming out alongside 3D Mario, which, you know, that was part of my predictions. Like, you know, if it's not Zelda in May, it's Mario in the holiday. So, Mario DK, I think backward compatibility will help smooth the transition and maintain momentum. Yeah, for sure. Sakum Bomber, do you think they'll announce a new Mario 2D or 3D game in a direct early in the year, or summer if it's coming out in 2023? So, that's a good question. It's a really good question. I'm trying to decide when I think I mean, it's either A, it's announced in February, it's announced in the summer direct. I'm gonna say that we get a Mario game announcement next February. Like, I think there's a good chance of that. I don't think it'll be 3D Mario though. I think it'll be 2D Mario. Unless it's the other way around. I don't know. It's tough. Because I think from one angle, why should Nintendo market 3D Mario when they're marketing Tears of the Kingdom? You know, like, I think they could do Tears of the Kingdom and then start to market 3D Mario afterwards. But if they're coming out with a 2D Mario, maybe that 2D Mario is coming out in summer, then I think that would be discussed in a February direct. So this is what I think. I think if it's 3D Mario, we wait till the summertime to see it announced. And if it's 2D Mario, we see it announced in February and it actually comes out a little bit earlier in the year. I could be totally wrong on that, but it could go either way. Yeah. Yeah, so the thing for Donkey Kong is that you're right. Like, and that's actually the reason why I say you're right. I think you're right. I don't know. The reason why my predictions were that we see a 2D Donkey Kong game and a 3D Mario is because I do feel like, yeah, maybe space out the 2D Mario and have 2D Mario come out next year. And I think Donkey Kong makes sense for this year. Because I also feel like it'd be a little weird for Nintendo to release multiple Mario games in the same year. Alright, so I'm going to bring in Sammy here in a moment. And we're going to talk about this, but also on top of that, the Switch Pro stuff being canceled. And then after the call-in segment, we'll talk about potential online features for Tears of the Kingdom. I have a few ideas I think might be pretty fun. But just give me one moment here because... Okay, it looks like he stopped barking, so I think we're good. But let me go ahead and bring Sammy on. Just one moment. One moment. I'm still here, so... Let me just pull up Discord. I'm going to call Sammy here momentarily. Okay. Let me know if you can hear me. Alright, just started the call. Can't hear you though. Alright. You might have to mess with microphone settings. Hey, I see you on video.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me make sure everyone else can hear you. Say something for me.
Yeah, I can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Hold on.
Okay. Alright, can you hear me now? Maybe? Okay, you might have to try... Alright, let them figure that out here for a moment and then come back to you guys.
I know.
Can you hear me now? Still
yeah,
no?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep.
Alright, there we go.
Alright, very good. Alright, one moment here.
I haven't used Discord video yet, so.
That's okay. Yeah. Right, so one moment here, my computer's being weird. Okay. I should be, hopefully, things should be working now. Nope. The computer is being weird, guys.
See, whenever I'm in like a video chat or anything, like bad luck happens all the time.
Nah, it's okay. We're
like
good.
a bad luck charm.
No, we're good to go. Everyone can hear him.
Right, cool.
Yeah, they can hear you, Sammy. You can hear me. We're good to go. So no issues. We're actually fine. Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
cool.
So forgive me though. The way I have this set up now, it's just me on camera, so they can only hear you. Because when I do it on by myself, I'm not on the Discord, so it's just kind of has my capture, but everyone can hear you. But yeah, thanks for coming on. Is Sammy the best way to call you?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So wait,
yeah,
what were you gonna say?
Let me first increase the volume here for you so we can hear you a little bit better. All right. Yeah. So what I believe we want to kind of like talk about was just kind of like this stuff about Switch Pro being canceled, but obviously with this next gen rumor stuff, it does change the conversation a little bit. Was there something in particular you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. So there's been a couple rumors. Like you kind of went over it a little bit with like the Switch 2 by 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it's a Switch 2, but
yeah.
Yeah. See, what I'd like is just an incremental increase, like a next gen increase, but same kind of form factor. Obviously, improve the Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
Like maybe just like a DS to 3DS, where it's just more power and better features and stuff. And I want to bring up. So I think it was in like May of this year or something. It was also last year. So there's when Nvidia had that big leak. NBN2,
yeah.
I believe.
Right. Yeah.
And they're also developing a Tegra chip. No one said it's for Switch 2, but it could be for Shield 2, which Tegra X1 was for Shield, and it was also for Switch. And this chip would have about like not underclocked, just normal, it would have like 2.5 teraflops or something, which is pretty good. That's like a Series S, right? So it can handle next generation games.
I'm not a master of teraflops, so I don't know, but I've heard the conversation, right? And it would be a substantial upgrade, right? And if you account for like this DLSS technology, which will kind of, close the gap a little bit more so, with a little bit less horsepower. I would think that it would be at least powerful enough that we could start to see some of those third-party games that are not coming to Switch now. I agree.
Yeah, it would be able to handle. I don't know about undocked, but docked it would be able to do 1080p 60 easy.
Okay.
But maybe 1440p 60, which it only needs a 1080p image to DLSS it because it's like a 4 times or something like that. I'm not a huge tech guy either, but from what I've read. But yeah, and based on something Robinson, I forgot his name.
Andy
the guy
Robinson?
you were talking about.
Yeah.
Based on what he's saying, it doesn't sound like it's coming out with Tears of the Kingdom, but I really think they should.
Yeah, I mean, we agree there. I think they should. Will they? That's a whole other debate, right? I will say that something, just kind of going back to like the hardware thing. I think that with the first Switch, what Nintendo basically went with like a stock like Tegra 1 or something like that. I think that with this next system, they will have taken a little bit more time, be a little bit more calculated, and I'm expecting something a little bit more customized, right? Like whatever we've seen, like whatever like Nvidia is releasing for their Shield. I'm not saying they won't use something that's similar to that, but I think it would be like a more customized version than what we got for what's inside Switch, which I think would bode well for the system. It would mean it would be a little bit more optimized for what they intend the Switch to do, or the Switch 2, I should say.
Yeah, because when the Switch launched, you could kind of tell like it didn't pick like the best chip, because I got my Switch, I played Breath of the Wild. It was pretty much dead within 2 hours in portable mode. I'm like, oh, obviously they improved it with like the V2, but
yeah,
you can tell it wasn't best power efficiency, the power.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think since Nvidia sees, oh wow, they're probably going to be the best selling console, we might want to, stick with these guys and give them something tailored.
Right. Well, that's a whole other thing. It's probably more than they bargained for, right? In a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't think many suspected that Nintendo Switch would perform this well. So and that's more reason to think that they'll go more in on the next system. I agree with that. But I also think that we talk about power like so much, but power consumption is a really important conversation point too, because the idea is it's going to be a hybrid system. So whatever it is, it needs to not only be like a solid home console variant, but also a solid portable variant. And that means that they do have to take power consumption in mind as well. Like they're going to want it to have a decent battery life. And, if they're trying to sell this system, you think back to how Nintendo would sell previous handheld systems, one of the things they would tout would be battery life. So, if they want to kind of compel people to transition, it's probably going to be easier for them to maybe do what they can to hit 4K, right? But maybe not go that extra mile to do true 4K, right? But just upscale to 4K, and maybe kind of not overclock, maybe the clock things a little lower in the interest of power consumption. So they could say, oh, now you can play Breath of the Wild and it'll last 8 hours, right? That would be crazy.
Yeah, that would be great. And let's say a new 3D Mario, something really intensive for the next system releases. I'd hope, since Breath of the Wild, when the Switch launched, was like, what, 2.5 hours? I'd be thinking maybe, 4 hours? Because here's the thing, power is important, but like the Steam Deck is very powerful, but its battery life is terrible. So it's like 90 minutes. It's an hour and a half. That's it.
Yeah.
So you got to strike like a medium. But here's the thing. They were using technology that really optimized towards portability as well. So, and they weren't working. I don't think they were working like as closely with someone as Nintendo is with NVIDIA. So I think Nintendo is going to fare better. I think Valve just, rushed the Steam Deck out to compete. But
yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see Nintendo put out a system that outdoes even that, and then I'm sure they'll come out with another Steam Deck probably sooner than Nintendo took with the Switch, right? Like, I doubt the Steam Deck's going to have as long of a lifespan as Switch has. So
no, Valve releases system when they with their Valve Index, with like their VR headsets, they release them like every couple years. They have like real quick turnarounds.
Yeah, it's a different beast. Like,
yeah,
it's not like,
because they're not like one of the big three, so they're
it's different for sure. So was there anything in particular that you else wanted to focus on today? I'm just kind of looking
next.
Go on.
Next gen upgrades with like current Switch games. How do you think that would work?
So, I know in some videos when I kind of talk about it, like, I mean, sometimes, like, for example, my predictions video was like 36 minutes long, and I brought up some points about the next system improving things, and I think when I said that, maybe it was explained a little poorly. So I think that one draw for the next system, because I expect it to be backwards compatible, and I'm also expecting to be forwards compatible as well too. Like, I don't think Nintendo's going to alienate their nearly 120 million systems out there, and it's gonna be even higher by the time this system comes out. Like, there's no way they're just going to alienate that, because it's an active user base. It's a current active user base. It's not a dying user base like back on Wii, right? Like, there was no current Wii users, really, not many by the time the Wii U came out in 2012. Like, even in 2011, things were bad, because Skyward's, like, the gap between Donkey Kong in 2010 and Skyward Sword in 2011 was significant. So it's not like that at all, right? So they're going to want to have games that are available. The new games that are coming out for the next system will still be available on the current system. That's what I believe, and I don't really care too much about the rumors that we're hearing from online right now, because I just don't think it makes sense. And that's the thing. Like, sometimes with rumors, that's why when I talk about rumors, I try to, like, relate it to what makes sense first, and if it doesn't add up, that's why I try and think of other options. But to kind of talk, just to get to my point, one of the main features that I expect games to look and run better. But it isn't going to be like every game that's on Switch right out of the box is going to run in 4K. I don't expect that. I understand that much, that DLSS isn't like something that just happens automatically. It's something that it has to be kind of programmed for. They have to patch particular games and work on them for that to work. Now, similar to how Nintendo had like Labo versions for a few of their key games, I expect that Nintendo will have 4K updates for some of their key games, like Smash Ultimate, Mario Kart 8, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 3 maybe. Like, their major games, they will have like 4K patches for with DLSS. But across the board, without patches, I'm expecting any game with a dynamic resolution will automatically run closer to their cap, if not right at the cap. And any game that has like frame rate issues will all of a sudden run a lot smoother. And like, that's just right out of like any Switch game you play on Switch 2 will just look and run better. Not to 4K, but just like to whatever their dynamic resolution cap is, to that point, which may mean, like, for example, Like Doom, you play that on your Switch, normally it might look kind of blurry, but it'll look like a solid like 720p most of the time, if not entirely all the time on Switch 2 because of that dynamic resolution running pretty much at its cap. So that's something I kind of expect. I'm also expecting improved Joy-Cons as well, but I've had trouble thinking about how they can improve those Joy-Cons. Like, what can they do for it to make sense? Because the reason they're small is so they can fit. Like, they're I think the size is already a huge concern. Like, the Switch is a very big system compared to previous Nintendo handhelds, you know what I mean? So I think one way to improve the comfort of a Joy-Con is by making them bigger. But I think that's also something they're trying to, like, not do. So that's kind of like a tough point for me. So I even wonder if maybe, like, you know how the OLED has a bigger screen than the base Switch, right?
Yeah.
So what if instead of increasing the screen size, they keep the size, they use basically the OLED screen. Like that's the stock screen inside Switch 2. But maybe they even, like, I don't know if they can reduce the bezel a little bit more. Like, just make it a smaller system but same size screen, just to keep the size down a little bit, but also increase the size of the new Joy-Cons a little bit, and maybe instead of them being flat, they have a little bit more of a groove on them to kind of add to the ergonomics. Nothing significant to where it wouldn't fit inside of a dock, but just something to where, like, when you're holding that thing in your hands, you're not going to feel numb afterwards. That's something I kind of wish they did.
Yeah, because right now the Joy-Cons are very rectangular. If there's like little grooves so you could grip it easier for long play sessions, that would be a lot better.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it's even something they can do without changing the size of anything. It's just adding subtle grooves. Like, if you think about it, because right now the way the Switch is, the shoulder buttons stick out at the end, right? If you look at it like vertically, but the other side of the Joy-Cons are totally flat. Like, they could afford to put a little bit of a groove on there, and it would still be able to fit into the dock. You know, I mean, well, the Joy-Cons are on the side anyway, so it wouldn't really matter. And if they had a little bit of a groove on there, they would still fit in cases, and it would be a subtle difference, but it would be a difference that I think people would appreciate.
Yeah, for sure.
One other thing I would like, which would seemingly be subtle, but I think would make a big difference. I would hope they find a way to make the control sticks a little bit bigger. I feel that they're too small. Cause I mean, I just always prefer to play with my Pro controllers, mainly because, well, one, I like having blood flow in my fingers, and when I play with the Joy-Cons, I mean, well, you know, docked mode I just prefer unless, you know, I'm on the go. But the control sticks, like, I would never play with Joy-Cons if I have a Pro controller. Like, I'm always gonna opt for a Pro controller. Even sometimes, like, if I have my Pro controller with me, I'll opt to play in tabletop mode as opposed to just holding my Switch because of the comfort of the controller. And part of that is the grips, but another part of that is the control sticks. I just think that the smaller control sticks on the Joy-Cons, they don't feel as accurate or precise. I feel they're more fragile. If they could kind of beef up those control sticks a little bit, that I think would make a big difference. But the problem with that is like, how do you do that, right? Because size, I mean, how much size they take up, how much space they take up matters. So if they could find a way, maybe they make the Joy-Con slightly slimmer so they could afford to make the Joy-Con stick out a little bit more. Or maybe there's more of a recess inside the controller, so there's a bit more space in there so they can, you know, they have a little bit more reach. There's just something I feel like they got to do about the control sticks to make them better.
Yeah, like, man, if the next Switch, if the control sticks on the Joy-Cons would be like it is on the, because I have a Pro controller too. I'm the same way since 2019. Since I got it, I haven't used the Joy-Con since. But I haven't gotten stick drift on my Pro controller, and the sticks are really nice on those.
Yeah, they're a lot better made, for sure. And the thing is, like, they're trying to fit so much into the Joy-Cons There's a lot of technology in a small amount of space, so I know it's a challenge. But I would even be okay with them dropping the IR sensor. I understand that it had its advantages in Nintendo Labo, but beyond Nintendo Labo and like 1-2 Switch, like how important is the IR sensor in the Joy-Con?
Yeah, I kind of forgot it existed.
Yeah, like that's one of the, unless they do something that like takes a big advantage of that, I feel like that's something they should just scrap, and just focus on making the controller more comfortable.
Yeah, I think it was just a gimmick that was used with, 1-2 Switch on launch,
and I'm okay with the motion controls. I would love for them to improve the HD Rumble, by the way. If they can make it more comparable to what we're seeing on PlayStation's controllers, that would be amazing. Now, again, if they're smaller, it's harder, but, actually an interesting thing to consider, if they are adding grooves, like a little bit more size to them, but on the underside, so it's a spot they can afford to take space out, with, that gives them more space to put internals in there. And maybe that can give them the option to put in even better rumble technology, something that better compares to the PS5 controllers. Like the rumble it has it's on another
the haptic feedback.
The haptic feedback is even better than the HD rumble that Switch has. So I would love for them to improve that as well. Maybe make it 4K rumble, I don't know, but like just enhance it. Maybe they still call it HD rumble, but just say, hey, we worked on HD rumble, it's a little bit better now. Like it could be as simple as that. That would be amazing.
Yeah, and yeah, it would be a welcome change. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that would need to change there's not a lot there's a couple glaring issues with the Joy-Cons, but like the battery life in them are obviously good. But yeah, just like the control sticks, they're, my hands are big. They're a little too small for me. So,
yeah.
Yeah. And so what do you think about another, like a Nintendo Switch presentation, but like for the next generation?
Yeah.
You think it's going to be something like that when they reveal the new one?
It's tough. It's tough because, like, this is what I want. Okay. Now, what I want isn't necessarily what's going to happen, but what I want there to be an event. It can happen a little bit after Fire Emblem Engage comes out January 20th, right? So maybe it happens yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind if it happened beforehand either. But let's say we get, I feel like there could be like a little direct that showcases the new hardware. This is in my dream scenario where the new hardware comes out in May with Tears of the Kingdom, right? So they have this mini direct, and it's basically just introducing the next iteration in these family of Switch systems, or the next system, right? And they just talk about it for about 8 or 10 minutes. They showcase its features, that it's very streamlined, and they don't announce any games per se, but it's something where we see a few games here and there, like, oh, look, that's Pikmin 4. Oh, look, that's new footage for Tears of the Kingdom. Oh, is that Metroid Prime? Like, they won't show Prime 4 there. Maybe they'll show like a snippet of a Prime remaster, and they'll show maybe a snippet of F-Zero. Like, just for games that are coming out throughout this year, they'll kind of hint at them. Or maybe even just showcase games that have already been out that just look and run a little bit better. But I feel like they could do like a short direct like that. They don't need to do like a whole 1 hour and a half presentation like they did with Switch, because I think Switch 2 in large part is going to be mostly the same, but improvements. And now they have some crazy gimmick. I'm all for that too, but I don't really expect that. So that's what I kind of think. And then a few weeks later, we have the February Direct, and then that hypes up the different games, right? And then we're gonna probably get a Mario movie Direct a little bit afterwards. Then the Mario movie comes out in April. I think a Zelda Direct will happen in either March or April. And then Zelda comes out maybe with this new system in May, and they will have marketed this new system alongside Zelda throughout that entire time. Like, that's my ideal scenario, right? But So a lot of people seem to think that it's not happening that soon. So if it's not happening that soon, then maybe I still feel like it won't be like a large presentation. I still think it's probably going to be like a direct, like a short one, like an 8 to 10 minute direct, where they kind of showcase the improvements of the system, and it just happens afterwards. So if it's coming holiday 2023, maybe it happens in July or August, right? And if it's happening 2024, then maybe it happens in January of 2024. But that's kind of what I think. I expect like a short direct.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same. Because with the Switch, it'd be cool to get a big presentation like that. But with the Switch presentation, they were kind of in a different situation.
Right.
They needed the Switch to succeed. Because they were putting, if you really think about it, it was really risky. Because they put all their eggs in one basket. After the Wii U, performed blah. And the 3DS performed okay. It kind of carried them.
I wouldn't be surprised that had the Switch failed, they would have just moved on. They would have had a 3DS successor. A true 3DS successor. If the Switch had totally bombed.
And maybe that's why they were releasing games for the 3DS still to kind of keep that brand alive.
It's a twofold plan. One, to just ease over their business platform, like, not just give up on their 3DS pillar, which was bringing them the money. They want to support that audience, but also give them time to transition over. But on the third fold being, well, just in case things don't work out, we still have this audience that we have been supporting that we can offer something else for. Yeah. I think Nintendo did something very similar back when they had the Nintendo DS. I remember back then they were talking about how they had 3 pillars. They had this 3-pillar nonsense. And I think this 3-pillar nonsense was basically just like the Game Boy Advance was still getting software into the DS's life cycle, and had the DS flopped, they would have moved on with a different type of Game Boy Advance. It would have looked more like the PSP or something. I think they would have done that, and they just kind of used this whole argument of 3rd pillar to really just have a backup plan. But I mean, also when you think about it, like, I don't think it was too crazy for Nintendo to kind of like have a 3-pillar idea, because I think their hope was the same way how there were games coming in for Game Boy Advance into the DS's life cycle. Maybe their hope was, maybe we could have the Wii, and then there will be support for that system going into, like, they wanted to like have both their home console platforms and their handheld platforms bleed into each other. That way there's always like 3 different systems going on at a time, and they can kind of stagger it. Like, maybe that would have been like the ideal 3-pillar strategy, but that's not how things panned out, because Nintendo's home console business was just a mess. I think just thinking about how I handle things now. I mean, right now, I mean, it is what it is. There's no multi-pillar strategy. It's the single pillar, but it's the thickest, strongest pillar they've ever had.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning, all the analysts were predicting like on how much Switch would sell, 40, like before it launched. They're like 50, 60 million. Best case scenario. Yeah,
the people were saying 60 were like we're getting like insulted. It's like how dare you think Nintendo could hit 60? They can never do that well. Like and what's crazy is that now Nintendo's like doubled that and still going.
Oh, on that note, what do you think about the Switch beating the PS2 in sales? 155 million.
Do I think it can get to that point? So yeah, I don't know, because with all this next generation talk and what some people are saying, it gets a little confusing. So if it wasn't for what everyone else is saying, I would be arguing, and I have argued, that maybe what Nintendo does is that their next hardware doesn't completely phase out the Switch. Like, I was even willing to argue that maybe it's almost like a Game Boy Color to Game Boy, where Game Boy and Game Boy Color are considered a part of the same family of systems. But the Game Boy Color was still a more powerful system that improved the games from beforehand. It had exclusives, it improved, it was kind of a very similar thing to what we're talking about for Switch and Switch 2. Very similar, but it was considered part of the same family. So, it would be interesting, you know, if Nintendo came out with a new system and maybe they'll call it Switch. I mean, basically, I'm almost like talking about like a mid-gen refresh, almost. But it would still be that next generational leap, and it would be relevant for more years to come. Like, if they would do something like that, they would be guaranteed to become the best-selling system ever. But it would be kind of like a cheat code, because it's kind of like Game Boy Color were two different systems, but they combined them into one. So they did like a mid-gen refresh thing like that, where they kind of maintain there's still 20-ish million units sold per year for like the next 4 or 5 years. Then obviously they're going to pass 150 and maybe even get to 200. So if they do things like that, for sure it's going to happen. But assuming they don't do that, and their next system is just straight up Switch 2, it's cold turkey. There's no like hybrid transition. It's the next system. Can they get to the 155 mark? And right now they're around 120. So, and we're not at March yet, right? So we're not at that. We haven't completed the 6th year yet. So where will they be at the end of the 6th year? Maybe they'll be around 125. I don't know. And at that point, they're just 30 million away.
Pretty realistic.
So if by the 6th year mark they're at 125, they're just about 30 million away. Can they average 15 million for the next 2 years, which would be less than any current year they've had? And that sounds doable, but if they have next generation hardware coming out, obviously that's going to take away from that, right? But
right.
Another thing that they have going for them is they've yet to do a price drop. And something else, you know, I'm kind of really glad we sort of talked about this beforehand, right? Because we were talking about how in the past, Nintendo's talked about having like the 3 pillars and having a fallback plan. Like, had Switch bombed, they would have just probably had a successor to 3DS instead, like a direct successor. So then we've talked about how Nintendo seems to have a little bit of like a fear of what's going to happen afterwards. Like, they're nervous about moving on to their next system. Well, they can use the Switch as their fallback. When the next system comes out, be it 2023 or 2024, regardless, they price drop the Switch. Still come out with new games for the Switch for the next 2 to 3 years. And between them still supporting the system in conjunction with the next system, similar to how Sony has for the PS4 and PS5 and Microsoft as well, people are going to buy both systems. If they get the Switch Lite down to 150, people are going to buy that. Like, eventually I feel like they got to get a system down to $99. Like, we're not even close to that point yet. Switch Lite is still at $200. Switch is still selling for $300. OLED's still selling for $350. So we haven't even hit a price drop yet. So
right, you got to remember.
Yeah, go on.
The 3DS was still kind of selling when the Switch released. I think in fiscal year 2017, it sold like 8 million units or something. So March 2017 to March 2018. So like, when they release a new console, it doesn't mean their current system's not going to sell. It's just going to be like the budget model.
Exactly, it's going to become the budget model. And since we haven't had a single price drop for Switch yet, they could still really push that. And if they push that for another 3 years, well, maybe they will pass 155. They'll be close. Because I mean, numbers are gonna go down. Like I fully expect that. But I mean, they go down, but they're gonna be selling Switch 2. Like, so they're not gonna really go down. They're just gonna be more distributed. But yeah, I think that they could. I do feel like they can do it, but it's not a foregone conclusion either. But I think, since they haven't done the price drops yet, and if they continue to support the system for like another 3 years alongside their new system, then they're gonna, if they don't pass it, they're gonna be really close. Yeah. But
yeah, they'll at least pass like
go on.
140 million. They'll at least settle at like third place, I think. But there's a solid chance they pass the DS and the PS2.
Yeah, I think 140 is pretty likely, right? Because I mean,
they could do it next year, possibly.
Right. Yeah, I think, and then they're still probably gonna have a couple years of sales after that. So that seems 140. I think is a safe bet. It's really just a question of if they get to the 155 range. But is there anything else you want to kind of talk on before we part ways for the evening?
I think we pretty much covered everything.
All right. Well, awesome, Sammy. Is there any sort of social media or anything you would like for me to share out to everyone?
Actually, my YouTube, I'm probably gonna start making videos soon.
Okay. Is there already an open page I can check out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I made a banner and a profile picture, so I'll probably be making like my first upload within the next couple weeks or something.
Sure.
I'm less busy.
Can I search it now?
Yeah. Sam talks about games.
So
it's all the same.
Talks about games.
Yeah, I haven't came up with a good channel name yet, so I just kind of put that as a placeholder.
Yeah,
but
trying to find it. The YouTube algorithm's kind of tough. How about you post it in the chat, and then I'll see it.
Yeah.
And I'll just... If you post in Discord chat, I can share it to everyone in the live stream.
Oh, I typed in the YouTube chat.
Oh, that's fine too. Yep. That's fine too. Let's see.
But yeah, I'm really hoping, I'm a little jealous, like of, or I'm a little stingy, you could say. I just want Tears of the Kingdom to run at 60 FPS. That's all I want.
Right? Yeah, I am so hoping that happens.
That's going to be a gargantuan game. I mean, huge. And it's going to be a huge seller too. So I think they should really, if they launch a new system with Tears of the Kingdom, I think the same thing's going to happen with what happened with the Switch. It's just going to be a runaway success.
Yeah.
Because whenever they launch a new console with Zelda, like Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild, it's always a big seller. And even the 3DS had a poor launch, right? But
it did.
Then they came out with Ocarina of Time 3D. And then it started selling pretty well.
Software pushes hardware, always. But all right, so I'm gonna move on to my final topic here. But it's been good talking, Sammy. I would love to have you on again in the future. Have a good one, all right? And I'll see you in the chat.
Yep, you too.
All right,
thanks.
Take care, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
All right, cool. So, yep, I thought Sammy was great. Hopefully you guys enjoyed him. I posted that in the chat. It's a little hard to find it, but when he does finally upload a video, we'll share that out so you guys can check him out. But, what I want to talk about now is some Tears of the Kingdom online features. So, basically, there was a pamphlet that came out that shows that NSO is going to be a part for Tears of the Kingdom, and there's definitely interpretation of what that could be. Does that just mean cloud saves? Does that mean maybe something more extensive like cooperative play or online multiplayer? What does it mean? And I think it could mean there's honestly a lot of possibilities. I'm going to assume it's something more on the simple side as opposed to something more significant, but I am going to play around with some ideas as well. So on the simple side, I think it's probably I think it's more than cloud saves. I think cloud saves is a given, but I do feel like it's going to be something kind of more along the probably maybe you'll be able to access the DLC, the eShop that way, and download the DLC that way, and maybe There will be a paid DLC expansion, and it'll be for free for Nintendo Switch Online members. Like, it could be basically that. But there are some other considerations. So, for example, in the Wind Waker, they had the Tingle bottles that worked through Miiverse. So you could send like messages to people through the bottles. They could have something like that in the game. But I'll go a step further. I think there's a chance. You know, I'm not saying it's like a likely chance, but I think there's a chance that Nintendo could go in the direction of Dark Souls. And the reason I say this is because you look at Breath of the Wild, and they've talked about it. They looked at other open world games and adventure games for ideas and inspiration. And it's been over half a decade since, and there's been a number of Souls games. Elden Ring came out, it was Game of the Year. It's a big deal kind of game. I'd be surprised if they weren't looking at some of these games and thinking about what advancements they're doing, and if we can take any of those ideas into consideration. So, the idea I'm proposing is, what if they were to take a cue from the Dark Souls, Soulsborne series, and have player versus player and player versus enemy, or like these ghosts that roam around. So it wouldn't be quite so much like straight up, oh, you can play with each other at time, but maybe there are moments, or maybe like you can see other players briefly interacting with the world, but they're just ghosts or Shadow Links. They can bring back Shadow Link, and Shadow Link is just another player from another game, and it doesn't have to be to the same extent as an Elder Scrolls. It could maybe be kind of like a stopgap between the Tingle bottles that we saw in Wind Waker and what we saw in what we see in not Elder Scrolls, but in the Soulsborne series. I say Elder because Elden Ring, right? And then yeah, but something in between. Like, so maybe like you don't necessarily call people in to help you with boss fights, but maybe you could. And they could go that far occasionally, and maybe sometimes duels. But it would just maybe be like the occasional, if you want to kind of get help, you might see a shadow, maybe with like that green energy, or like a Shadow Link, do an action or so to give you an idea, which really would just be an evolution of the idea of what they did with the Tingle battles, how people could interact with each other, send messages, and maybe give each other advice. So I think, you know, they could maybe go in a direction like that. And I think that'd be a really neat way to offer up some connection between players playing the game. And if you think about Breath of the Wild and all the crazy things that you could do in that game and the crazy discoveries, if there's even more of that in Tears of the Kingdom, being able to share messages with each other and help each other out throughout the gameplay will kind of, I think, facilitate even more discovery. So I think that could be a fun idea that they could do. Going beyond that, an idea we talked about in Nintendo Prime's podcast last night, so it's not my idea, but what if there was like a dungeon maker where you could take like the shrines and just kind of customize different kinds of shrines and share them with other people? How crazy would that be? That would be insane, and it would offer like unlimited gameplay. I don't think they'll do that, but I don't know. I could see it maybe as like a challenge, like as like a DLC update later on, maybe. But there are some options like that I think could be pretty cool, that people would really enjoy. So those are just kind of like some online ideas they could potentially do. But let me see what you guys think here in the chat. This is kind of going back to some of the conversation we were having before, but Ray said the Joy-Con triggers need to be better, and they should have a proper D-pad. I would prefer a D-pad as well, actually, and I would like analog triggers, so it's not just a single click. Maybe there's a double click like back on GameCube, where there's some level of analog there, and not just straight digital single press, no other input. I would like that. GU King of Heart, more side buttons on the Joy-Cons. Maybe. maybe. You know, I'll say that I think one reason why I think the reason they went away from a D-pad is because they really were all about the cooperative play through the Joy-Cons. And if they're going to stick with that idea, I think improving upon the shoulder buttons, the internal ones, the SL, SR, would be a good idea. Now, I know they did give us like those little slider things with the extra buttons. I personally don't like them. But, you know, maybe they can kind of just work on how easily you put those on and the comfort of those. Maybe they can make them a little bit better. So, yeah, you know, I think that's another improvement we can maybe see. And I agree. Get rid of Joy-Con drift. That's a huge improvement. DK77 Anatomy. I feel the map of Breath of the Wild was way too big, and the game suffered as a result. If the map was half the size, it still would have been the biggest map in Zelda history. I'll tell you, I think that's a hot take. I, for one, enjoyed the map size in Breath of the Wild, because the long exploration. Now, I guess what I'm curious on is, what about the bigness bothered you? Did you feel like you were getting lost too often? Did you feel that you were wasting your time going from one point to another? What was it about the size of the map that bothered you? Did you feel like it was too spread out and there wasn't enough content in between? Because, you know, they can still... I don't think maybe making the map smaller is necessarily the answer, but I also understand what you're saying. Having a denser map with more interesting things in between, it can lend itself towards a better game. I understand where you're coming from. But okay, so I see you said something else here. Majora's Mask was a small map, but the world felt huge. If Breath of the Wild map was half the size, but more condensed with something happening around every corner, it would have been a good game and not so empty. Less is more. Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from. You know, I think one of the pleasures of Breath of the Wild is the exploration and moving about. For me, it's fun just to move around in Breath of the Wild. So all that extra space to move around, I loved. But I will give you that I think one of the ways Tears of the Kingdom can improve upon Breath of the Wild is by making that map denser. Give us even more quests. But when I say quests, I don't just mean like basic quests. I mean interesting quests like Majora's Mask, where every different mask was like a different story and someone was dying or grieving or some sort of weird venture. Like all of that, all about. Like I would love to go help Lon Lon Ranch or some other farm that's having alien invasions, right? Like that'd be really cool. Give me these weird, funny, quirky, spooky interactions. More of that. That would make a big difference for the game. Super Chris, Nintendo should have made the Wii U gamepad act as a mini-map for said console's version of Breath of the Wild. I think the reason... I didn't play the Wii U version, but I'm assuming if they took away the map from the gamepad, is they wanted parity across both systems. Because they definitely were playing around with that idea at first. The Megaton Menace. There will definitely be a Mario Sports game in June. How confident are you that there will be a Mario Sports game in June? Let's see. Let's look at every Nintendo published game that's come out on Switch. I know there's been quite a few sports games, and without really thinking about it, it almost feels like it's been every year. But I wanna double check that. Let's see. Let's see if we can go by year here. Alright, I'm in the Switch era. Okay, so in 2017, we had 1-2-Switch, which I wouldn't quite call a sports game, but there was ARMS, which not a Mario sports game, but there is a, you know, some boxing there. Mario Odyssey, not a sports game. All right, so 2017 didn't have a Mario sports game. But what about 2018? We had Mario Tennis Aces in 2018. Okay. All right, so that's the start of the Mario sports games in the summer. In 2019, we had I don't see a Mario sports game. I see Mario. There's Mario Bros. Deluxe in the beginning of the year. Mario Maker 2 in May, if I remember correctly, or was it June? Not a sports game though, unless you think building Mario levels is a sports game. So 2019 didn't have a sports game, but I know there were more sports games. So 2020 comes around. 2020 was a weird year. We had Clubhouse Games, Worldwide Classics, a lot of board games. Not a Mario sports game though. Let's see. Now in 2021, we got Mario Golf Super Rush. Okay, so we got Mario Golf Super Rush, and then 2022, this year, we got Mario Striker. So we've had 3 Mario sports games. Do we get another one? Mario Sluggers, anyone? Or Mario Ball, basketball would be cool. There's some options. It's not every year, so I'm not necessarily expecting one this year, but maybe. I think since we had back-to-back Mario sports games for 2021, 2022, I think maybe 2023 is when we take a break for Mario Sports. JM0235, honest, do you think the team doing Mario Maker is skipping Mario Maker 3 to do Zelda Maker? That honestly makes a lot of sense. I don't think we need another Mario Maker right now. I think it would be a better investment to make a Zelda Maker or something entirely different. So, yeah, that's a good question to ask. If they announce the Mario Maker 2, 3, I mean, that's fine, but I do feel like that would be probably a mistake. And considering that they followed up Mario Maker 1 with 2 pretty soon after, I think it makes more sense to focus on something different. And a Zelda Maker would do really well. Mario DK, I think they could be like hint links. So let's say you're stuck in a real dungeon, and you can see what some other link did. Exactly, like something like that. Like you see like just like a shadow or some sort of phantom green link or gray link pass by really quickly. Basically, pretty much how the Soulsborne games do it. But instead of it being like combat, you see them doing some sort of interaction. And it only happens if you're... And you can opt out of it. You don't need to do that. But if you want like a little bit of extra help, you can see that in there. Yeah. And so, yeah, maybe it's not even like PvE or PvP where you can fight with them or against them. But it's just like you see them sometimes so you can get an idea of what they're doing. Audi Cashback UK. Lol, Pro canceled. There never was a Pro, then a 2 Switch. It was always a 1 device that's still coming. RIP Switch Pro, the bigger reality. Yeah, so, you know, I think that there were reports, and I'm not sure what... I think that it was based off something real, but I don't know what that real was supposed to be. I think it's possible they conflated information or plans changed. But that's just what happens. Like, you know, I remember there used to be a lot of talk of a Wii HD, you know, come out with a Wii that has in HD. And I think that would have been a great idea if it came out early into the Wii's life cycle, like 2009 maybe, or 2010. But that never happened. Charles should abandon an Namco baseball game for Mario? Yeah, I'd be down for that. Mario Sluggers, bring it back. Felipe E. Actually, the Mario Maker team makes Pikmin. Okay, there you go. Mario DK. I like the world will be so much bigger, and there will likely be complete dungeons like old games. So maybe Nintendo wanted a way to help players without a Navi-Fi. Yeah, so you know, this idea of like just like shadow links from different players around the world, offering a little bit of extra guidance for when you need or want it. I think that would be a nice way to have like that assistance without it being like an annoying character that follows you around. Honestly, that was something I did not miss in Breath of the Wild. Like, I liked it when sometimes Zelda or the king would speak to you, but those are like rare, like, you know, just like basically story moments, right? Like the random hints where they constantly where they pester you or then tell you where to go. I don't need that at all, and it's cool because the idea with Breath of the Wild is just figure it out. Like you do what you want. In the other Zelda games, because they were linear, it kind of felt like they had to have that to kind of guide you on where you should go. There is no where you should go anymore with Breath of the Wild, and I do think to some extent that will be the case in Tears of the Kingdom, but I'm hoping for some level of linearity for the sake of story and just how we can go about doing the dungeons and getting items. But I don't, I really hope they don't go back to having like an annoying pest character. Now, if it's something that's very subtle, you know, like the hand will probably help you out. It might have a little bit of a mind of its own, but I don't want it talking to me all the time. ASAP Row. I know that I recognize your profile picture, but the name is different. Isra 3 Light. When do you think we'll get another? When do I think we'll get another trailer for what? For Zelda? A dedicated trailer, I think we don't get that until a February Nintendo Direct. But I think there's a small chance that if there is an announcement of new hardware earlier, they'll show some snippets of footage in that. But it'll be more about the hardware, and they'll just use all to kind of showcase it. But in terms of an actual dedicated trailer, we don't get that until February. And this idea of a Direct talking about new hardware may not even happen. I just want to point that out. But if they're announcing new hardware early, that's what I would expect to see. GU King of Heart. What games will happen year 1 of Switch 2? Just call it Switch 2 for now. Nintendo will need at least 2 hype games year 1. So I haven't. Again, that kind of comes down to what kind of game or when the system comes out, right? So I mean, if it comes out this year and they launch with Tears of the Kingdom, well, there's one. Then I would expect 3D Mario to be a big holiday release for, you know, for this year. But let's say it doesn't come out until next year. Well, at that point, I would assume a 2D Mario game comes out this year. And 3D Mario comes out to launch with the system next year, if it's coming out next year. But I also think Metroid Prime 4 would be ready by that point. And also, in 2024, there will be a new Pokemon game. So maybe they get positioned that for the next system as well. But I also think there will also be playable versions of all these games on base Switch regardless. But that's what I sort of think will be like the major games for 2024. If 3D Mario's not 2023, it's 2024. And then Metroid Prime 4 and the next big Pokemon. Like, those are games I have in mind. Monolith's next new IP could be a big deal. Could be a franchise that maybe ends up selling more than Xenoblade. If they go in the direction of it being like an MMO, like I'm hoping, then it's like, you know, like a massive multiplayer online RPG. That would be really cool, and I think that's something that could do really well. That's speculation, by the way. There's not a lot of evidence as an MMO. That's just my own thing. There's some. I have reasoning behind it. It basically just kind of it goes off of how they handled Xenoblade X, and if you look at Xenoblade Chronicles X, they had some MMO-like elements, and since then they've been focused on the more linear story-based Xenoblade games. And we've kind of, you know, they've focused on that. I would like to think that when they move on, this next project will be something that'll be geared in a way that one could hit a larger audience. So MMOs, the kind of thing that would do that. And I think it will be a natural evolution for what they were working on with Xenoblade X. Like, yes, it's a big open world, but the idea is that you worked with teams, and these teams had objectives with each other, but it would all happen passively. I think it needs to happen in real time, and then when there would be these moments where you could go into battles with your team. I think they need to take that to a whole other level, and so maybe having a game with some, maybe not, if it's not totally MMO, but a lot of MMO like qualities, like maybe you play with a squad, like, you know, like 4 or 5 people in a crew in a massive world together. That would be really cool. Maybe there's like different lobbies you can jump in. I think going in that direction would be really cool as like Monolith Soft's other series. And that, you know, coming out early on in the system's life cycle could be really cool if it takes off. You know, maybe it could be like Nintendo's way. Is it Final Fantasy 14? Like their version of that would be amazing. Dash Frame. I hope Monolith does a new fantasy style RPG and borrows elements from the Xenoblade combat system. I mean, so like this IP I'm talking about would still be a fantasy style RPG, but one that has multiplayer online multiplayer elements like combined together, and I still think would take elements from the Xenoblade combat system. But imagine, like, instead of you changing your party members, you're a single party member, so you're focusing on you. But if it's like a multiplayer Xenoblade kind of game, right? Everyone else has their own roles, and they focus on that. So then the combat could actually afford to get deeper because you hone in on what you do for your particular character instead of focusing on all the different characters because someone else is playing those roles. And so then everyone has their own role that they have to fulfill, and if they don't do a good job of it, that can really make the entire battle a lot harder. John Lagusakos. Breath of the Wild 2 is going to sell like crazy, but I really feel like Nintendo most likely missed a huge opportunity to release it alongside a next-gen console. What are your thoughts? I mean, my thoughts are that I think it makes sense for Tears of the Kingdom to come out alongside new hardware. So the fact that they're not doing it, well, it's not a fact. That's the point I'm making here. We don't know that. I think a lot of people are acting like it's not going to happen, but I just feel like it'd be weird for Nintendo to not take advantage of that. Like, I really do think it's weird. Like, as we were talking about earlier, like, imagine Tears of the Kingdom in 60 frames per second, how amazing that would be. Now, you know, I fully believe that regardless of whether there's new hardware coming alongside Tears of the Kingdom, that there's going to be like an improved version of it. I just think that it's still kind of a shame to have to wait for that after the fact, especially since we're supposedly so close, you know? If they're talking about Tears of the Kingdom being the last big game for the Switch before new hardware, that to me is just like, well, why is it the last one? It shouldn't. I mean, I think it should be a cross-platform release. Breath of the Wild was great. It worked perfectly for that. Twilight Princess worked perfectly for that. There's this huge history of Zelda doing that for a reason, so I don't know why they would shy away from that. And I know most Zelda fans would buy a new system if it meant Zelda with better visuals. Like, yes. I think a lot of Zelda fans, when they play Zelda, they want it in the best way possible, right? Like, for me, I remember when Twilight Princess came out for the Wii, I waited to play that game. Like, we got it and we played Excite Truck and Wii Sports, like, together as a family. But I was the one that was going to play Twilight Princess. And that was a game I was waiting for a long time. There was a lot of anticipation and time building up for that game. But I did not rush to playing it because I needed to wait until I was isolated, where there was no one else around, no interruptions, no distractions. You know, I put on we had like a surround sound system, so I made sure that was on, and I made sure to play this game without any interruptions because I wanted it to be the best possible experience. And I feel that most Zelda fans are like me, and that they want Zelda to be, you know, like, they want to completely immerse themselves in it, and they want it to be as enhanced as possible. And I know not everyone's going to buy new hardware for it, but a lot of people would. So, you know, I think it's strange, but, you know, maybe Nintendo just thinks, hey, game's going to sell, right? Maybe it's not them thinking with their hearts, it's just thinking that from, like, you know, just what fiscally makes sense for them, right? And maybe they acknowledge that regardless of what they do, Tears of the Kingdom is going to sell like hotcakes. And when they come out with hardware, because of how things are right now, it's going to sell like hotcakes, and they don't need to have them come out alongside of each other. And then it may be as simple as that. They don't need them to, so they're not going to. They're going to space things out as much as they can to continue sales momentum. And maybe that's what it's about. Maybe, you know, it's not like when the Switch first came out where they need to do everything they can to make sure that they had the momentum. Because now they have it. So maybe that's what they think. I don't know. John, it's not, you're right. That's why I put most likely in brackets. I really do think they won't, though. If a Switch upgrade comes out now, we probably won't get a new console. Oh, well, I mean, it's one or the other. You know, it's not like we're gonna get an upgrade and then we have to wait and then we get another one 6 months or a year later. No, like if they come out with a new system that's more powerful, we're waiting at least 3 years. So yeah. Yeah, it's whatever the next system is the upgrade. If there's an upgrade, that's the upgrade. And it's going to be relevant for at least another half generation or so. Like that's just how it's going to be. Unknown player. I also hope Tears of the Kingdom has more enemy variety. Right there with you. Yeah. I also would like to see it have more enemy variety. I think that's something I kind of expect that, you know. I laughed at something I saw in the chat. I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, I expect there to be more enemy variety. We've already seen some signs of new enemy types. There we saw I'm forgetting the name of it. There's this bird creature we saw in the trailer, the most recent trailer. It's called something rock. I'm trying to remember. What is it called? What's it called? I know one of you in the chat's probably gonna get it for me. I've talked about this in videos and stuff. It's just slipping my mind. My keyboard's not working. There's something wrong with my computer. I need to fix it, but I don't know how to fix it. There's something really wrong with it. Like mouse is typing things for me, and I'm not touching it. Oh, come on. I can't even type bird. It was like bitter space G. Like it's really bad. No, not the loft wing. One of you in chat get it for me. The Argarok. I think it's the Argarok. Yeah. Well, there's a dragon. That's similar. Yeah. The Argarok is the dragon. So there's something else that's similar to that. Is it Kargarok? Or is that the bird? Yeah, it's the Kargarok. Yeah, the Kargarok. Which looks different in different Zelda games. We saw something like that in Tears of the Kingdom. Let me see if I can show you an image of it. Oh, now my keyboard's working again. Alright. Well. Yeah, this is it. Okay, cool. Alright. Now I can't. Yeah, I really. One moment here, guys. Okay. So. There we go. So. This is the bird I'm talking about, right? There's different versions of it from different Zelda games. But here, from the most recent trailer, we see what appears to be the Kargarok again enters the kingdom. So we are seeing evidence of new enemy types. Let me not mention that we saw like that green like golem thing as well. So yeah, of course now I can't get to my computer just won't let me do anything right now. Yeah. So and we've seen evidence of that. There we go. Dash frame. I don't know if I kind of talked about it already, but you were asking, was there anything that made you think Monolith will do more multiplayer focused RPG? Part of it is just, I think, a natural evolution of Xenoblade X gameplay, but I'm trying to think. There is a concept art as well that we've seen that doesn't really suggest multiplayer per se, right? It's again, and it's why I try not to argue that like, oh, this idea, it's just an idea. Yeah, I mean, if you look at all the concept art, there's nothing in the concept art. It's like, oh, that's a multiplayer game. Like, there's not really any of that. They just all look like cool, like sci-fi fantasy worlds. It's cool concept art, but that's what it is. It's really just, I think, a natural evolution for the series, for the Xenoblade X in terms of gameplay, because they were playing around with multiplayer elements and they've kind of gotten away with that with the linear Xenoblade games. So I think, when they try something different, they're going to go in the other direction. And also, I think that, Monolith Soft does a lot. I could see them trying something that could potentially see more sales, so going in a multiplayer direction does lend itself towards that. And it's really as simple as that. There is the other element of how Xenoblade is kind of like Nintendo's Final Fantasy, and Monolith Soft, once upon a time, was a part of Squaresoft. Squaresoft broke up. Part of it became Square Enix, the other part became Monolith Soft, and eventually, it's now come to be owned by Nintendo over the years. At one point, it was owned by Bandai Namco, or Namco, because Bandai Namco changed, but then, yeah, it's now owned by Nintendo. And what's interesting about that is you look at Square Enix, and they have Final Fantasy XIV, which is an MMO. I'm not saying they want to do exactly like that, but I do think that it's something that you would think a major RPG series would explore at one point or another, or at least a developer of major RPG series would explore at one point or another. So I just feel like it's inevitable that they're going to want to consider that as a possibility. And considering the gameplay of Xenoblade X and where I think the natural evolution of that could go, and it would be something that they want to be different from the story focus, the linear story focused of the mainline Xenoblade games, the numbered ones. It just seems like a nice logical step. Now they could go in a different direction, but it's just kind of an idea that I have that I've fallen for, and I think it has a solid chance. Now, solid chance doesn't mean likely, because it's not based off any like hardcore evidence. It's just something that I think makes sense. But I'll also say, there have been many times where I've thought of something that just makes sense, and that is what happens. Not always. A lot of times I'm wrong, but there are times I'm like, hey, this would make sense, and that's what happens. One obvious one is Metroid Dread, for example. We used to talk about how like Metroid used to go have more fear elements, and Metroid Dread went more in the fear direction. We talked about how it would need to be like 2.5D, You know, have like behind the shoulder moments, first person perspective moments, which they had with the cutscenes. Like a lot of the ideas we talked about for a 2D Metroid before they announced 2D Metroid all proved to be true. The only thing I didn't get about Metroid Dread was that they would call it Metroid Dread. But everything else about it, I was like, I thought it was like really spot on with the speculation. Another game that I sort of called in terms of gameplay, it wasn't just me, it was me and Brandon together. We had a discussion together about it, but we had the idea and it made sense. Is Kirby in the Forgotten Land. It was before they even announced the Kirby game. Well, we knew that they were working on a Kirby game, and there was this idea to be more ambitious. That's all we knew. And from that, we extrapolated the next logical step for Kirby is a 3D Kirby game, but not like an open world Kirby, but maybe something more with like isometric gameplay, but it's more akin to what we saw from 3D World. And what happened? That's exactly what we got in Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Isometric gameplay, 3D Kirby. That's what happened. And so ideas like this have occurred. And another one hasn't been proven yet, but we've talked about how F-Zero GX is a very likely remaster candidate, because when you take a look at that game on GameCube, you can see the visuals, you can see how it would just look really good simply by being upscaled. And you can make that game relevant simply by taking it as it is, maybe adding some quality life stuff for the difficulty balance, and offering online play. So we'll see. You know, and these are just things that are kind of, if it's rumored right now, and I think it's rumored from some credible sources. If it proves to be true, it's something we talked about years ago, happening over the years, and purely based off logical deduction and maybe Captain Falcon showing up in a few different like Smash Bros. Teases. So it's just kind of one of those things. Like sometimes, and I'm saying the only person who's come up with these ideas. It's just sometimes I think there are things that make sense, and the developers of a particular game also like, hey, you know what really makes sense? This. So let's do it. Like, let's not forget that we're talking about a company whose job is to make games. Games are supposed to be fun. So the ultimate idea here is that they're going to make something that we want to play and buy. So if there's a really cool idea that we think is like a natural step for a particular series or developer, if it actually makes sense, then you know what? The actual developers may agree, and we may see that idea. Hence why our speculation for Metroid Dread was spot on. Hence why our speculation for Kirby the Forgotten Land was spot on. So, you know, I don't know what Monolith Soft's new IP is going to be. Some people are even arguing it's not happening. But I feel like their new IP, when it comes out, it's going to be another RPG series. But, I mean, maybe it'll be like more real-timey. That's kind of a whole other thing. But I expect it to have multiplayer elements. Maybe not totally an MMO, but something in that direction. More so than Xenoblade X. So, we'll see. Let's see here. There's a few different things you guys asked that I've missed out on, so I'm trying to get to it. Let's see here. Geo King of Heart. How many people will buy Tears of the Kingdom in the first 3 days? 5 million easy. I bet like 8 or 9. This is what I laughed at earlier. Geo King of Heart. You said I'd be so mad. In before I get mad at Andres for saying he wants a delay. I want a delay. I want Tears of the Kingdom to get delayed so it comes out with my Switch 2. No, I don't. I want Tears of the Kingdom to come out May. Like, that's... Yeah, I no delays. It's coming out May. That's when I want it. Mario DK Academy. If Nvidia and Nintendo are unable to get out any kind of upgraded hardware 6+ years after Switch, wouldn't that make their 10-year partnership a failure? What has the hardware team been doing? Well, I mean, we got Switch Lite, we got Switch OLED. Of course, they use the same internals, but I see what you're saying. Well, there was the semiconductor shortage, so you know that doesn't impact things. Yes, a 120 million sold failure. Like that's a lot. They produced that hardware a lot. If they want to promote a Zelda OLED alongside the trailer, would make a lot more sense to wait, since they'd not want to mess with holiday sales. So I'll give you that if they have a Zelda OLED in mind with Tears of the Kingdom, that would be something that maybe they push throughout the year, and they just have it dominate the holidays, and then they focus on Switch 2 in 2024. Like, they could do that. It leaves me with a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, but I see where you're coming from. Yeah, so the Kargarok was from Twilight Princess, but there's also there's a cell shaded version as well, as I showed earlier. Big Man, hey. Do I think there will be any announcements on March 3rd? No. I mean, there could be, but I don't think so. Like, is that when we're gonna have like a financials event? I don't think there's many specific major. I mean, there could be, but I don't think it's. I don't know. Like, when is March 3rd? Like, what day is that fall in the year? I can't even look because my computer's being dumb. I don't know. My computer's having so much issues, guys. It's been a real mess. March 3rd would be a Friday. I'm not expecting any announcements on March 3rd. We'll get announcements around then. I think. Let's see. I got another super chat here from Samuel A. Thank you very much for the super chat, Sammy. Possibility Xenoblade Chronicles 4 down the line. I do not think we've seen the end of Xenoblade Chronicles. I do think that there's going to be a bit of a wait. I think at this point we get the Xenoblade DLC for 3 in 2023, and then the coming years we're looking at a enhanced port of Xenoblade X, and then after that maybe we get the new IP from Monolith Soft, and then after that maybe we start talking about Xenoblade 4. That's what I think, which might be about 5 years, you know, from now, which I think is fine. Could be 4. Let's see here. Yeah, I trust Monolith Soft. They have thumbs of gold dash frame. All right, let's see here. Having 05, you want to play X first, and you hope they make an X2 in the future. Well, I mean, if a Xenoblade X port might open the door for that. Unknown player. I started playing Xenoblade 3 and I just couldn't get into it. I'd like to play action games where I'm in control as a no auto battle mechanic. So Xenoblade 3 to me just didn't catch my eye. Well, I mean, I wouldn't really say it has. I mean, it sort of has auto battle mechanics, but like only a little. You're supposed to be moving and acting the entire time, then pressing art and switching. Like, when you really get a feel for the mechanics, you're constantly doing stuff. So yeah, I mean, you're totally entitled to your opinion, but you know, I'll say that I like it when my games have real-time action. So I understand where you're coming from, but the auto battle mechanic in Xenoblade does not bother me. It's cool. I like the way it's done, and the idea is you're supposed to pace it. So like on the third attack, it's more impactful. You got to be thinking and moving and timing your strikes and art. So like there's a lot more going on than just waiting. Like, if you're waiting, you're doing it wrong, is the point. Mario DK. What do you think of Metroid Prime 4 and the next 3D Mario if on Switch run at 30 frames per second to push richer worlds since they are so late in the gen? They'd be 60 FPS on Switch too. 3D? No, I don't know. So the problem with that is that the entire Metroid Prime series was 60 frames per second on the Nintendo GameCube. So, let me think about that. I feel like there should be no excuses. Prime 4 needs to run at 60 frames per second. And Mario Odyssey also was running at 60 frames per second and looked pretty damn good. So, I don't see it. I think, I mean, I understand though, because like maybe you could say, oh, it is 60 frames per second on the new hardware, but you get these. If the thing is that they're just trying to push like these really rich worlds and the way they make it look that great, and it still looks really good on the Switch, is because they slash the frame rate and lower the resolution. They could do that, but I just don't see Nintendo doing that, because the FPS impacts gameplay, right? And if it's already the standard for both series to be at 60 frames per second, I think dropping that to 30 on Switch, which by the way is where more people are going to buy it at first, I don't see that. I don't think they do that. But I understand where you're coming from though, because you want the games to look as good as possible, right? Something to point out is that, specifically with Mario Odyssey is already one of the best looking games on Switch. What happens after 6 years of figuring out more ways to take advantage of the Switch and coming out with other different graphical techniques and technology? Nintendo has been employing different systems in place to like have higher resolutions and things like that and better performance in their games. So they're going to take that to a higher level with the next 3D Mario, even the Switch version. So it's the next 3D Mario is going to look better than Mario Odyssey, which already looks really good. So yeah, I'm going to say no. 60 FPS across the board, both series. If not, that would be a huge miss for Nintendo, and I think there'll be backlash. Dash frame. I'm not super tech oriented, so this might sound like a loaded question, but do you think a next gen Switch could be on par with a base model PS4? You know, that honestly, that's what I've kind of thought. I've kind of thought that, like, you know, the next Switch would be kind of like a portable PS4, but it also will have the DLSS that would actually push it in ways beyond what a PS4 would normally push its games. So, kind of, yeah. That's what I've kind of imagined. Now, I'm not a big tech head either. Just based off the conversations I've had, that's sort of how I've envisioned it. Mario DK, Sunshine, M6, Mario 64, and handheld Bowser's Fury were all 30 FPS, so it could happen. Yeah, there is a history of previous Mario games being at 30 frames per second, but I think a mainline Mario game, I just don't think they go back. Now, I'll say I didn't realize that Bowser's Fury was at 30 frames per second, but that is a side mode added to 3D World. Didn't they make 3D World 60 FPS? Like, let me just double check that. 3D World Switch frame rate. Super Mario 3D will run at 1080p 60 FPS while the Switch is docked, and 720p 60 FPS when playing portably. Bowser's Fury will run at 720 60 FPS while docked, and 720 30 FPS when playing portably. So apparently it's still 60 FPS when docked, but drops to 30 in portable mode. So there you go. Still 60 FPS when docked. GU King of Heart. Any reason why Nintendo won't, or maybe they can't, help polish non-Nintendo games? The Pokemon Company and some other third-party games could use Nintendo's help. Breath of the Wild is still best looking. I'm sure some people would argue there are other games that look really good on Switch, like you got the Mario Rabbids games, you got Astral Chain, Monster Hunter, Bayonetta, But yeah, I mean, there are some issues with Bayonetta. Pokemon games. Listen, the reason the Pokemon games look and run the way they do is because they rush the hell out of it. That's why. That's it. And if Nintendo was involved, Pokemon games would have much longer development cycles. It's that simple. So they're not going to help with Pokemon. Even though Nintendo owns Pokemon to an extent, Pokemon Company, Game Freak, they're on a different sort of system. They don't interact that much. Like it's a weird relationship. But yeah, I don't expect them to do that. I wish they did. I wish Nintendo would be like, hey, yo, Monolith Soft, help them out. I think they do sometimes offer up some help, but I think the problem isn't that Nintendo wouldn't help them per se. It's more to do with that they rush those games. It's that simple. They rush those games. They come out with a game every year. That's why. But yeah, so I think I have reached the conclusion for tonight's Q&A. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. I really appreciate it. If you could leave a like, I'd appreciate that as well. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure to subscribe. But there will be content coming out every day, pretty much. And we have a show on Monday night. I am not sure if it's going to be... if we're going to do the podcast on Monday night, or if I'm gonna do a special Zelda show on Monday night. We're still gonna live stream on Monday. There'll still be Q&A, but there's gonna be like a dedicated debate that I'm gonna do that's Zelda specific. So stay tuned for that. I'll be making announcements throughout the weekend. And Mario DK, to answer your question, I edit my videos with Adobe Premiere Pro. And right now my computer has been performing really. It's not a power issue. It's just there's issues with my computer I have to get fixed. But yeah, Adobe Premiere Pro, I use it. It gets the job done. Most people recommend it, but I have to spend money for it. It cost me $20 a month. But if you're a student, I think you can get it at a discount. So yeah, for sure. There are some free editing softwares you want to try out with something free first. So there's that. I'll also say, I don't even use Photoshop. I use GIMP for my thumbnails and stuff, and it's free. So you can check that out too. Yeah, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. I don't always respond immediately, but you can send me a message on Discord or Twitter. I will eventually get to it. But yeah. Have a good night, guys. You take care.